Hello there and welcome to Fairyland Cottage, and thanks very much for joining me here today. Happy New Year to you all. It's wonderful to be here chatting to you, the first video of 2023. And I thought, as always, we'll start off a little bit slowly, taking the pressure off ourselves. Sometimes January can be filled with huge expectations and pressure on ourselves to make new goals and achieve everything we want to achieve. But it's actually still winter. It's a time for going inward, being still and quiet, and slowly kind of waking up to the year. So I thought today we could talk about the reality of living sustainably. And the reality of living sustainably isn't always pretty and organized like you see on Pinterest or so forth. For me, it's all about an attitude of trying to be resourceful, trying to use everything that you've been given in some way, shape, or form. Either you're going to reuse it in another way, share it with someone else who will reuse it. This is my husband's mother's jewellery box. And we were given it at Christmas. And what's so interesting is it's her favourite toy at the moment. So it's lovely that it's getting reused in that capacity. What I find about living sustainably is that sometimes things are used in a capacity that you never would have thought of before. One of the things with sustainable living is that not everybody has the access to things like zero waste shops, where you can go and fill up your bag or your jar. What we do here, because our zero waste shops are really far away from us, is we order in huge quantities. So we're basically ordering the same that a zero waste shop would actually have. And once you have a place to store it, again, it doesn't always look very pretty. I'll just go into the office where it's cool and dry and then refill the jars all the time. One of the things that always gets to me about sustainable living is that it's different for absolutely everybody. It's so dependent on where you live, how much money you have. There's just so many factors that go into play for living sustainably. And I don't think any of us should ever feel bad for not being able to do the things that, say, somebody else is doing. That's why it's such a personal thing. So it's a way that your mind is kind of thinking, well, what can I use this for? How could I be a little bit more resourceful? Even if I was driving back and forth to the zero waste shop, that of course is using up more energy. It's better for me to order and then I have it there in the house. And we just order things like flour and rice, things that we know we're always going to be using daily. So I'd love to know how you all are on these January days. It's cold here in Ireland. I know other places in the world it's far colder. And some of you are experiencing your summer. But our days look pretty much the same. I'm doing a thing that I found online, which is 1,000 hours outside a year. And I'm finding it just a great encouragement for me to get outside with our little fairy. No matter how cold it is, once you just wrap up warm and just get outside. Our little fairy is walking more and more. She's getting a lot more confident and she's starting to run a little bit, too much for my liking. But the forest floor is nice and soft and I have a little kind of strap that I can hold. We're getting these beautiful, cold, fresh days that are really dry, which is unusual for us. Ireland usually has a lot of rain, so I'm just going with it and enjoying the cold air. Usually for me, January is a time of wanting to just get little odd jobs around the house done. So for me, January isn't about thinking big. The seedlings or any of the seeds that I plant can't be planted yet. It's still a little bit too cold. So it's just about finishing off little projects, tidying up after the Christmas season, making sure I'm resting, I'm nurturing myself. There will come a time and a place for going out and being more active. And now for me, it's not the time. It's a time just to be a little bit more restful. So I do odd little things around the house. One of the things we made before Christmas was the apple cider vinegar. So that's ready now to be strained through. And then what I'll do every January, usually in January, is make the pine cleaner for the year. It's very simple. If you haven't made your own apple cider vinegar, it doesn't matter. You can just use some vinegar. What I find with simple living and living sustainably is it's a lot of the same things over and over. There's not much new. It's really just using a lot of old ways of the way people used to do it before everything kind of got more fancy or in some ways more complicated. So of course vinegar is a little bit harsh in the sense of the smell. So I'm just using some leftover pine and I'm going to soak this for a month or two. And it just gives it a nice kind of pine smell, and it does actually make a difference. It takes the harshness of that vinegar smell away.
Do you want one?
So I've been doing this same recipe for years. It's nothing fancy, but I will steep all these pine in all the vinegar and then just let it set for either a couple of weeks or a couple of months. You'll kind of know yourself by the smell when you open it. And it's a nice thing to do in January because you can, if you had a real tree, you can use the leftover leaves on the tree. These were just some decorations I had over the Christmas period, and now I'm getting to reuse them in another capacity. I'd love to know what recipes or what you're making in January. For me, it can be a time of a lot of hope for the year. I'm thinking in my head what seeds I'd like to plant for vegetables this year. It's all about kind of visioning and just having fun, getting everything prepared for the year, if that makes sense. We're still doing composting, which definitely is never glamorous. Our little fairy was out the other day and I turned around and she had picked up all the compost and was handing it to me. But it's all good and it really is nourishing for the soil. And of course is a way of getting rid of food waste. Something else we got for Christmas was this little tiny fairy house. It was one of my father-in-law's friends, beautifully made it. And we just need to seal it before putting it out. Another thing I find with sustainable living is if you buy something, you then keep using it to the absolute max. So instead of just buying something, using it once, we sealed our shed with some paint. I'll always go for something that's low VOC, and there was still some left, so you just keep reusing until something's used instead of having loads of tins of paint. Another thing with sustainable living is maintaining what you already have. So we've had this polytunnel since we moved into the cottage about 8 years ago. And of course, every year there's a build-up and it just needs a good cleaning so that it's really efficient to then grow the vegetables for another year. In modern society, it's a lot about buying something, then when it's not working or so forth, buying another one. When you're living sustainably and simply, it's about just looking after what you have and then fixing it or maintaining it so that it lasts as long as it can. And of course, it's obviously great if we can buy really good quality, but that's not in everybody's bank balance. So you just buy the best quality that you can at the time and look after what you have. And of course, that's not a glamorous job, but it's so worthwhile. And I think it just shows an appreciation for what you have by looking after everything. Another way I live sustainably is if I find something, like these bulbs were thrown into the compost and they would have been forgotten about, and I just saw them the other day. So I'm trying to make use of them another way so that they'll bring beauty into the house. It took me a while, a lot longer than I thought, but it worked in the end, and hopefully these bulbs will have another life indoors. As I was saying with living sustainably, you're always looking for another way to use something you have. So I've got loads of scraps of wool. I love crocheting, but there's always these little scraps, and I keep them because I think I don't want to be throwing them out. So one of the things you can use them for is the birds love using bits to make their nest. So these are just little snippets of wool, and this is a cup that I broke over the Christmas period, and I tried to glue it, but there's still a big crack. So this is going to go outside, and hopefully the birds will use some of the wool for their nest. Yeah, going to put it outside for the birdies? Are we? Yeah. Yeah, we're going to go outside. So I thought the little fairy house would work beside the little pond in the front garden, kind of like a lake house, let's say. And it'll be lovely to see as the year goes on and more greenery surrounds it. And hopefully that sealant that we put on will mean that the wood won't rot. And I have actually used these wool scraps before, years ago, and I remember seeing them in one of the birds' nests. So let's see, do they use it again this year? Every year we've had birds' nests close to the house. So I'm really hopeful that there'll be, and excited that there'll be some more birds' nests near the house this year. And finishing up with the bread, I still use the same bread recipe I've been using for years. And some wonderful chutney we got from a neighbour. The reality of simple, sustainable living isn't always pretty and organised. It's just using what you have, thinking constantly about not wasting things, appreciating everything you have, not taking any moment for granted. Life is short, we're all here temporarily, and just doing the best that we can. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know what you think sustainable living is for you. And let's take the pressure off ourselves and do our best to just be kind to ourselves. I will see you all in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.